Hello and welcome to another book haul, except this book haul is books I'm keeping. And these are all from that big warehouse buy I did in October. And I have already shown you guys the 2 boxes of hardcovers that I kept. And if you haven't watched that video, I'll link that up above. But now I'm going to show you the giant box of paperbacks that I have kept, which as you can see is completely full. And there are some really amazing titles in here that I know that if I sold, I would make good money off of, but because of the fact that I haven't found them before, especially some of them in this condition, that I definitely want an opportunity to read them before I let them move on to a new home. So let's go ahead and get into this. The first one is this Michael Moorcock book. I don't find Michael Moorcock very often, and this is Stormbringer. But that is because this isn't actually an omnibus by Michael Moorcock. So this has The Sleeping Sorceress, The Revenge of the Rose, The Stealer of Souls, Kings in Darkness, The Caravan of Forgotten Dreams, and Stormbringer all together in one omnibus. And I don't find Michael Moorcock very often, so to find an omnibus with all of these in there, I'm going to at least try to read this and then let it move on to a new home. This is Grendel by John Gardner. I read the back of this, and since it is a small little paperback, I figured I could totally read this and then let it move on to a new home. Never mind the fact that my TBR is super, super long. Now this does have underlining and highlighting in it, but who knows, we'll find out. It just seemed like an interesting little book. The Magician's Ward by Patricia Reed. So the reason why I'm keeping this one is because I actually found Marlin the Magician when I was a preteen, shortly after I had found Her Majesty Wizard, which Her Majesty Wizard Stegeman is tattooed on my arm, and got me really interested in reading fantasy. And I really loved Marlin the Magician when I read it, and I haven't reread it as an adult. This is the second book in that series. So I was like, well, this is a sign I need to reread that book and then do the follow-up here. But I know Patricia Reed isn't really talked about very often here on BookTube. So this is Christopher Pike, See You Later. Christopher Pike, I have saved one other of his books, and that is because Remember Me by Christopher Pike is a book that has actually saved my life multiple times over the course of my own life. I do need to read and review that again. And that is because the method used to kill the protagonist, so the protagonist is a ghost that you're following through the story to try to figure out who killed her. That's the premise of the book. But the method used to kill the protagonist that you find out in the book is something that I have to be very careful of because of my chronic illness and how I get treatment for my chronic illness. That if I hadn't have read that book, I probably would have died multiple times in, the last couple of decades because nurses are busy and sometimes forget about their patients. And when they forget about their patients, when a patient is receiving a certain kind of treatment, they could die. So there's that. So I would like to read more Christopher Pike and collect a little bit more of them again. So for me, my reading experience was I read a lot of Goosebumps and Fear Street and Christopher Pike as a kid. And then when I discovered Her Majesty's Wizard, that's when I went from like the kid horror pipeline to like adult fantasy. So there is that little bit of background for me, which I feel like you already got too much of at this point in the video, and I've only shown you 4 books. A couple of Anne McCaffreys. Let me just go ahead and pull the Anne McCaffreys out. I'm trying to collect all of the Anne McCaffrey's Pern books. Of course, I would love them all in hardcover, but that's probably never going to happen. But I found both Dragonflight and Dragon Song. And I'm going to keep both of these. I think this one is the first book in the series. It's absolutely gorgeous. So this is a very early copy of Dragon Song. Yeah, so this is a 1977 copy. It's not the first printing, but it is one of the earlier printings. I believe Haste maybe got the first printing of this. No, so Anthem published the first one in 1976 of this book. And then this is the second Phantom printing. So this is really awesome that I have those. The Book of the Dun Cow by Walter Wangerin Jr. Again, another book where I read the premise of the book and I'd never seen this before. And because it seemed interesting to me, I'm keeping it. The back says, the Book of the Dun Cow belongs on the shelf with Animal Farm, Watership Down, and The Lord of the Rings. Okay, that sounds like something I need to read. So that is why I'm keeping that one. Jane Yolen. This is Briar Rose. I have always been intrigued by Jane Yolen's artwork on her books. And this one is an intertwining of Sleeping Beauty and the Holocaust. And I just have to figure out how in the world you're going to make that work. So that is why I kept this one. That just sounds wild to me. The Wolf King by Turnbull. This is a scholastic book, but this is a children's fantasy. I'm guessing this is meant for, again, 10 to 12-year-olds. And I recently reviewed Skellig, and I would like to read more vintage books because I do feel like there's depth in there, because this is how you can continue a child's interest in reading. Like, you read to your kids when they're little, or maybe you don't, I don't know. I highly recommend you do. You read the board books, introduce them to letters and shapes and sounds, and then you continue to redo the picture books, and then where a lot of kids fall off in their reading after they get decent at it is around the preteen age, is when they start to lose interest in reading. So I kind of want to introduce more books that might help continue a child's interest and make them grow as a reader on this channel. So I would like to read this. This is from the 70s. We have a Planescape novel. If you did not know, Planescape Torment is my favorite video game. It's a CRPG from the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't remember the exact date. But I know that there's a Planescape Torment book, but I had no idea that they had other books. And so when I found this, I actually let out a scream, little scream, of surprise. And I'm so excited to read this. Blood Hostages, Planescape books, very excited about this. This got me into D&D. Planescape Torment, the game, got me into D&D and that kind of video game. We have The Very Best of Barry Malzberg. I know Matt is thoroughly enamored with this man at this point over at Book Pilled. And so when I found a collection of Barry Malzberg short stories, I'm definitely keeping this. I know I could definitely sell it, but I'm keeping it until I get to read them. Another book that when I read the back of it, I found it compelling, so I'm going to keep it to read, and then we'll move on to a new home, maybe. This is Eternal Light by Paul Macaulay. So we will figure that out. This is another book. I actually did put this up for sale up on Whatnot, and it didn't sell. And instead of rerunning it, I really like the title of this book. It's called Under a Graveyard Sky by John Ringo. I don't read a whole lot of Bane fiction other than, of course, Mercedes Lackey and Andrea Dorton. But I would like to find maybe some other Bane artists or some other Bane authors that I might be interested in. But one, the title is just perfection in my personal opinion. And two, when I read the back of this, the premise of the book sounds interesting. It's a zombie plague book, but I'm really interested to read this book, and maybe I will find another Bane author that I will be enamored with. Another book along the same lines as The Dun Cow. This is Foxglove Hollow by Dennis Philip Brown. And Another book with anthropomorphic animals, and y'all know how I feel about Brian Jakes. I feel like this is going to be along that line, so I'm going to keep this to read it. There is that. Also, like, look how cool the cover is. I am so excited that I found a complete duology by Dennis McKiernan. So I found Trek to Kragenkor and the Brega Path. So this is a Silver Call duology, and I did find both of them. So I'm going to keep this, because this, first of all, it looks neat. Looks very D&D-ish. I've never read anything by this author, so to find a duology, that sounds cool. Philip Jose Farmer's The Dungeon, first volume. This gave me very much Jane Yolen vibes as far as the cover goes. It might be the same artist. But it's Philip Jose Farmer, and this is volume 1. I did not find volume 2, which is tragic. But who knows? Maybe I'll find the second volume. But I have this, and it's beautiful. The Never-Ending Story. I have never read this book, which is a tragedy, because this definitely was one of my favorite movies as a kid, even though, you know, it traumatized an entire generation of children with the one horse scene. I still want to cry when I think about that scene. That scene is just as bad in Brotherhood Full Metal Alchemist as the little girl and dog scene. And if you know, you know. It's both just as heartbreaking and like, why did you do that? No, stop it. So yeah, I'm gonna eventually read it. John Wyndham, The Chrysalids, but in a vintage Penguin edition. Had no idea Penguin published this at any point. So really cool to find an original orange penguin of this. This one is from 1987. So the Chrysalids, very cool there. Bridger over at the Library Ladder did a whole video about a fantasy author that he believes is consistently a strong writer and deserves to be like the best fantasy writer. I will link his video, hopefully up above and down below. And I know I found one of the books in this series with Matt when I went thrifting with him when, you know, he was still in California before he started his nomadic life. And I've had a really hard time finding the rest of the books in this series. And when I found a whole bunch of them, including the first book, which I needed, I got really excited and I'm keeping them all so I can read this. Now, speaking of Matt, he disagrees with Bridger in his opinion because Matt did read The Summer Tree by Gavriel Kay, but I found the first book, The Summer Tree, the third book of the I don't know how to say this, the Finovar Tapestry, and I have the fourth book, and then this is Lord of Emperors, which I don't know if this is also this is the Sarantine Mosaic, so this is a different book series by him. But the fact I finally got The Summer Tree by Gavriel Kay, I can actually start this now. So I just need book 2, and then we'll be good. But yeah, because I've not found very much Gavriel Kay at all, that indicates to me that the people that read his books really like his books. So maybe they're more in line with Bridger's opinion than Matt's. So I have them now. I can form my own opinion at this point because I will have an opportunity to actually read them. That was, again, very long-winded. Dashal. This is the first book in the Dashal trilogy. This is a Questar book. The reason I'm keeping this is, 1, the cover is really cool. And 2, I've never heard of Jacqueline Lichtenberg. And I would like to read more female science fiction authors. So, and the fact I found the first book, definitely a win there. Probably the most disturbing cover, or one of the most disturbing covers, this is The Humanoids by Jack Williamson. I did find a more modern printing of this book that I sold on Whatnot, But when I found the more vintage copy with the really cool red-orange text block, I'm like, I'm keeping this one so I can read it. But that's pretty great. Carlos Castaneda, Tales of Power. Now, this unfortunately is the third book, I believe, in this series. So until I find the other two, I won't be able to read this. But this is really hard to find. So I'm keeping this in hopes that I find the other two books. Tea with the Black Dragon by R.A. McAvoy. But one, the book is beautiful, and two, the story seems interesting. So that is why I'm going to go ahead and keep this one and read it. I finally found the first book in the Xanath series by Piers Anthony. I have found so many Piers Anthony books, being a bookseller. And for some odd reason, his Xanath novels get so much hate. I have not read a single Piers Anthony book. And I was hoping to find the first Xanath novel and for that to be my introduction to Piers Anthony. And so I have that now. And I finally found a vintage copy of The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. Never been able to find this book. I can't even find an SF Masterwork copy of this. This is from 1984. So really happy to finally find a vintage copy of this. Super excited about that. I only found one ace double at the warehouse buy, and of course I kept it because one of them is an Andrea Norton novel. So we have The Crossroads of Time by Andrea Norton, and then Mankind on the Run by Gordon R. Dickson. So I am definitely adding this to my ace double collection. Again, another one of those books where I found it in the bottom of a Gaylord and I just let out a little squeal because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I found one of these. Very excited about that. And then I found pretty much a brand new copy of The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. I still have to read his, I think it's called the Stone Sky trilogy because the third book in that trilogy won the Nebula Award. So he is on my radar. And because of that, I'm keeping this one since I found it in like new condition. But that's really nice. And then the last book I have to share with you is an ARC, otherwise known as an advanced reading copy, uncorrected proof. Technically, this is uncorrected proof in the bin. In the same Gaylord, I found the ace double. And this is the Iron Trial. And the reason why I'm keeping this book is because it is a collaboration between two of my favorite YA authors. So Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. So Cassandra Clare wrote the Shadowhunters series and also the Clockwork Angel trilogy, and the Clockwork Angel is tattooed permanently on my body. And then Holly Black, I found one of her books called The Red Glove. And that's another YA series. It's a trilogy where it's curse workers. People have different curses, and the whole society wears gloves because all the curses are passed on by touch. Some of the curses are good curses or bad curses. It's a really great series. It's really interesting, and I really loved it. And that was my introduction to Holly Black. I found one of her books at Ollie's, actually, bargain outlet, when I worked for them. I ran their book department in one of the Ollie's. I've had a lot of jobs in my life, guys. But that introduced me to her, and then I really liked The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, which is one of her standalone novels. But basically, both of these ladies, I buy anything I find from them. So to find a collaboration from them that, one, I haven't heard of, and two, to get uncorrected proof, I was like, I'm keeping this. I do sell these, a lot of the ARCs and uncorrected proofs, because of the fact that they do have little excerpts from the authors in here, and like talks about different things, and then they'll have like little excerpts or chapters in it that aren't in the original or are in the ones that's actually published. So people collect these, and this is one that I'm going to collect because it's by two authors that I really love, and I will eventually read that book. This is the giant books of stuff I'm keeping, and yeah. I want to thank all of you guys who watch these videos and also who bought the books from that big book warehouse buy over on Whatnot. Because of the fact that you guys watch these videos, these haul videos, and also buy from me on Whatnot, it makes it so I can keep boxes of books like this and not feel bad about it, because I'm keeping them instead of making money off of them. It means a lot to me that I'm able to do that, because I do very much love the collecting of books and the reading of books as much as I love the finding them new homes. So thank you guys so much for watching this. Again, hopefully you guys will see a review soon. And until then, bye!